Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss on longevity and health aging. This is our 711th episode. We have our world famous speaker, Professor David J. Kelly, Professor David Smith, and Professor Rob. First, I would like to give chance Professor David J. Kelly.
Did you say something to me?
You're up.
Oh. Yes. Yes.
And what are we talking about? Manufacturing?
Longevity and health aging.
I'm sorry?
Well, we are discussing about longevity and health aging.
Longevity and
health aging.
Health aging?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Healthy aging.
Well, to be honest, I don't feel that I'm an expert in the field. I think it's one of the important things that's important to follow up on. But given my technical expertise, I've focused on another one of those priorities. I know there's a lot of research around it now, dealing with everything from telomeres to, protein buildup and some of these other things. But I do think it's something that's important and that we should be putting as many resources as possible into the field of longevity and super longevity and that sort of thing. It's probably one of the single most important things that humanity can do right now. And that's my opinion.
Thank you. Now I request Professor David Smith.
Sharif, thank you so much for having me on the program today. Longevity and healthy aging is a very interesting topic, particularly in a time that during the last 2 years since the start of COVID, we've actually seen for the first time in a long time the average life expectancy actually decreasing rather than increasing. Now we expect to see that curve turn around and start going up again. But longevity is a topic which all of us should find very important because we are getting older and older every day. And if you were to listen to my son and some of my circle of friends, I have forbidden the use of the word old. We're not old. We're getting older. And I think that actually works with the topic today, is that we're seeing longevity beginning to increase. If I go back and look at the science, kids today who are entering school, if we just look at simple trend extrapolation from what we can see with science today, they probably should live to about 150 years old. And all of the repercussions that will change in our social society and everything else. But it is one where there's a lot of topic. Living longer and living more years and disease-free are not one and the same. Our life expectancy should be getting longer, and we're also spending more years after we have contacted diseases, and particularly age-related chronic diseases. And we're seeing that. We see major advances, though, in regenerative healthcare and sequencing technology as we begin to understand more of the genome and what that can do. We're seeing dramatic advances in immune therapy, where we're manipulating our own body to increase our immune response to hold off disease and to solve disease, including diseases such as cancer. We're beginning to see more and more of the artificial intelligence and the advanced science research directed towards aging, and we're able to define aging and longevity separately now because we're seeing them go more. So just understand that health span is the part of a human's life where they're generally in good health, where lifespan is the start to the end of your actual life cycle. And we're seeing that beginning to really work well today. We're also seeing that scientists are now beginning to work more and more with analytics and complex mathematics, that longevity is really determined from not just what we do, but also the selected genes for our reproductive self. There's the concept of survival of the fittest, and this actually impacts itself in longevity and how we are. We all can see around the world that different species have different life expectancy, driven by some of their genetics, as well as the culture, as well as the environmental impacts on the other hand. On the other hand, though, we can also see that aging is driven by an impact of damage and repair processes on their bodies. We know, for example, people with diabetics. We know people who smoke a lot have shorter lifespans than those who do not. We know people who exercise more tend to have longer life cycles than people who do not. And we see those impacts. We also see that there's some disease that impact our life cycles. Now, on the other hand, trauma will always be a point of life as well, too, so we can begin to see it. But we're seeing that particularly advances in regenerative healthcare in the last 5 years have been amazing. And I believe we will begin to see that funneling back to more and more of the citizens around the world as this regenerative healthcare leaves the trial stages and moves more into the mainstream. And Dr. Sharif, I think that probably is the first part of what I should say today.
Thank you, Professor Rob.
Good morning, and I'm clearly not an expert on aging, though at my age it probably should be. Some interesting stuff out of Scientific America came out back in 2021, where they asked researchers to determine what was the hard limit to human lifespan. So far, the oldest, longest living human that we recorded was about 122 years. She didn't die that long ago, so there are probably indications that people may have lived longer and we just didn't catch it. But the hard limit is somewhere between 120 and 150 years at the moment. And that hard limit is established based on if you were able to eliminate all the things that causes you to age prematurely, diet, bad habits like smoking and drinking. What would be the hard limit? What would be the time the body would fall apart? And that's how they came up with that range of 120 to 150 years, max 150 years, regardless of what we do. Now, clearly, we're not making, most of us aren't going to make that 150 years mark. In fact, none of us are making it now. We only had that one person make it to 122, which means the odds that any of us are going to make it to 150 are pretty long. You can, though, do things to improve the quality of your life. There's another discussion that goes on is, it'd be great if you could expand your 20s, 30s, and 40s, but probably not so great if you expanded your 90s and 100s indefinitely. There's a quality of life issue as we get older and our bodies deteriorate. And so what you want to do is you want to preserve the time that you're mobile and capable. And we do know that exercise, diet, getting the proper sleep, and most recently drinking enough water. Just read a study earlier this week that indicated that people that don't drink enough water have increasing health problems as they get older and will die earlier than those that do drink enough water. So little tidbits like that can be very helpful if you get them in time and you change your living, the way that you're living in a way to take advantage of it. As they say, it won't do you a lot of good if you're 90 to find out all the things you should have been doing up until 90, because those things tend to do damage, and the damage is not easily, or it's not conceivable that you can undo that damage. A lot of it has to do with mindset. As we get older, certain parts of us degrade at increasing levels. So if we're not exercising, our muscles degrade. If we're not thinking and challenging ourselves, our mind degrades, and certainly infirmity can come in at an earlier age if we haven't been exercising our mind. So longevity and health are interrelated and really come down to adjusting your life practices so that you are maximizing your life potential and not doing extreme damage. There are companies that will do DNA analysis that will tell you what things you can and you should and should not eat. I expect in the future we'll have customized plans, also based on DNA and your family history, that will better assure a longer life. I'm aware that there's some folks working on this. I'm not aware of anybody that's brought it to market yet. But there is a great potential going forward that for us to have customized programs that are scientifically arrived at that allow us to live longer. Be aware there's a lot of fake science out there with regard to longevity. A lot of people feel that they've got the answer to this, and they're just selling a dream, not a fact. So be careful out there. There's just a lot of false information with regard to aging, and so you do want to weed through it, because otherwise you could be doing yourself damage. Body cleanses come to mind as one of those areas that there is no scientific proof that they do you any good whatsoever, and can put your body under an extreme amount of stress, which would cause premature aging. So in the end, it comes down to, how badly do you want to live longer, and how willing are you to change your lifestyle to assure that? And that's an answer that a lot of us are struggling with as we get to be my age. And it comes down to quality of life and choices. And some of us make good ones, and others not so much. And remember, it's always your choice. That's how I'll start.
Thank you, Professor Dave.
Well, let's see. I'm a very physically active 81-year-old, and I think physical activity is really important. I went out swing dancing on New Year's and danced everybody else under the carpet because the rule at our swing dance events is, if you ever see Dave sitting down, call 911 because my job is to get more women out on the dance floor. That's my self-assigned task. Take them out one by one, show them how to do it, and have fun. So that's important. I think human contact is really important. Being social, turning off the electronic devices like the one we're on now, but more importantly, this one, and get out and be with people is really important. Although those people may be carriers of diseases that will eventually kill you, they're also the carriers of the love and the friendship and the warmth and humanity that keep you going. It's really important, as everybody knows, to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. That's almost the most important thing. And you grind yourself down when you don't do that. It's also important to occasionally take a break and do something fun. And I think that really is a problem here in the U.S., where people get in the grind and then they don't get out and do something that's just a time killer, that's fun, that's be out on the water, or go walk on the beach, or go walk in the forest. Very important. Then there's exercise. different forms of exercise. You got to have exercise for strength, and you've got to have exercise for your balance. You lose your balance as you get older, and you got to have exercise for flexibility. So keeping those things in mind, strength and exercise and flexibility and balance, I think really important. Nutrition. Don't eat anything that comes out of a box. Only eat things that that you are made from natural ingredients that you have hopefully locally sourced without any added sugars or saturated fats or salt. And be aware of what goes into your mouth as well as what comes out of your mouth. I think those things are important. Myself, every day I do a crossword puzzle. I think it's really important to keep your brain hopping. So I find the toughest crossword puzzle I can every day, and I spend no more than 30 or 40 minutes on it. But I do that every day. Another thing is don't only associate with old folks. Associate with young people, and that helps keep you young. So I think those are all important. Oh, and you mentioned not doing body cleansing, Bob, and I think that's important too. But it's also important to time your meals so that your meals are first meal of the day. I'm going to eat mine after this discussion, so I'll eat mine about noon, and then the last meal of the day will be about 7. So from noon to 7, I'll be eating, and then I'll be fasting basically from 8 p.m. until 11 or noon the next day, so that I put all my eating in a short window of 8 hours, and then the rest of the day drink a lot of water. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I'll see you at 100. That's it for me.
Mr. Jason.
Thanks, Dr. Sharif. Appreciate it. Yeah, so I will go through some of the lifestyle, some things. Maybe I'll say that till the end. I mean, really just thinking about, like, whenever I hear the terms healthy aging and longevity, and these terms are used widespread in the field. All the even the top experts are use the same terminology, but at the end of the day, like healthy aging, I assume people are talking about healthy chronological aging, because biological aging, really, when you dig deep into what is that, we got to ask ourselves, what does that even mean? And I don't think there's necessarily, if we're defining it in the correct way, is probably not like a healthy biological aging, unless we're talking about developmental aging, which we usually don't talk about that. The process where you turn an embryo into a man or a woman. But I've essentially talked to a bunch of aging experts around the world, and everyone has their own definition on what aging is, why do we age, how do we age, and how to effectively stop it. And the best definition I can think of is essentially the body's ability to rejuvenate itself effectively goes down. So if you're in your 90s, you're still repairing, your body's still repairing itself, but it's not repairing itself as effectively as it was when you're in your 20s. So there's sort of a nomenclature thing. Whenever I hear healthy aging, I'm thinking, is that healthy? And even the term longevity, I mean, there's so many studies that are occurring all around the world that are lifespan studies. You're looking at worms or you're looking at rats, and you're really attempting to determine, does this intervention allow that animal to live longer? And at the end of the day, that takes a while to actually make that experiment happen, because if you're looking at a rat, rats live a couple years. So to really even determine did the intervention work, you have to wait years for if you're studying in rats, and weeks for worms. So there's actually a way you can determine if something works rather quickly, and that's our focus. We're focused on age reversal. It turns out that there's a backup copy of youth in every single cell in the body, and there's a way to actually extract that information. And they've actually shown already that you can take an older cell and revert it back to a younger cell. And this is a wide area of research. Companies like Altos Labs, which was funded by Jeff Bezos, they're actually looking deep into this protocol or method, partial cellular reprogramming. But really, I think that it's going to go much further than that. And at the end of the day, really, we have 78 organs, we have a microbiome, and we can measure and quantify the biological age of each organ. And we should be able to know when we do an intervention, does that work? And we should be able to know fairly quickly. It shouldn't take years to really determine if something new worked or not. We should be able to determine that fairly fast. So I think it's a better approach. And there's a lot of new technologies that are now coming into existence. You see things like Chat GPT as an example, which is actually just the beginning of this acceleration we're seeing in the artificial intelligence movement. And the applications are going to become broader, in particular related to aging and healthcare, because there's so much information now. I give the example of the genome. You can pay a few $100 today to sequence your DNA, which is just unheard of, 10, 20 years ago. And a lot of people are going to do that. And if everyone is on board with, at least sharing that data, maybe in an anonymized way, we can then run machine learning on that data to start extracting insights from that. And really, that's the tip of the iceberg. It's going to lead to many more innovations and new technologies. But we essentially say that we have a moral obligation to accelerate the development of key enabling technologies. These enabling technologies will allow us to revert people back. And we're taking a fairly dramatic or radical approach. At the end of the day, if you bring someone from 89 to 87, it's really not going to help them much. You really have to go back decades. And to do that, there's a bunch of technologies that can make that happen. All of them, someone could say are in the pipeline. Many of them are many years out. I think that one of the most promising ones would be nanotechnology. There's been this thought that we could build machines smaller and smaller, and we've seen that. We've seen machines now that are this very, very small, and they're only getting smaller. And eventually, we'll be able to put these machines or various forms of synthetic biology into our bodies, and they'll be able to help us. But until then, till we have that technology, the question we have to ask is, what can we do now? And there's all kinds of approaches to get us there. I won't go into each one in detail. But as of today, still it's the lifestyle things like everyone has kind of alluded to. I think getting your DNA sequence and knowing what you're predisposed to does make sense. You can determine if you have one of these APOE4 genes, for example. You could determine, is my risk of Alzheimer's higher based on my genetic code, as an example. You can, avoid processed foods, exercise, understand hormesis, shocking the body just a little bit, like with a sauna, can be good. But really, as you start digging deeper into these therapies that are coming out, such as plasmapheresis, which I describe as an oil change. This procedure is, I've talked to people who have gotten it, and they're actually seeing a dramatic increase in their health. I talked to someone, and they actually measured their biological age, epigenetic age, which is fairly accurate, before and after the procedure. And he saw a 9-year decrease in biological age in his blood. So obviously that's not every tissue in the body. That's not the brain, but that's a step in the right direction. And the fact that he could do a procedure and see a 9-year epigenetic age reversal just shows what we can do even today. In this procedure, essentially out of one arm, blood comes out, and then in the other arm, this material is going into your body, this albumin and saline material, and essentially you're getting an oil change. Same way with a car, every so often you gotta change the oil, and now it's becoming more apparent that doing that every so often appears to have these benefits, in particular for baby boomers and people who have essentially accumulated some factors in their blood. So I think the main thing for people today is to be adaptive. We may hear one thing, say nutrition, and we're going to learn more. I talk to a lot of people, and it's we're changing our minds on things so much. Well, I actually think that's a good thing. I think we should be willing to change our mind as we discover more. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Madam Ali Rice.
Hello. Okay. Well, from my point of view, I tend to always veer on kind of the natural path of doing things and making conscious decisions about what I eat, what my children eat, how much exercise we do, and all that kind of stuff. I also have my mum turns 80 in February this year, and she still plays tennis 3 times a week. So that activity is really important, and it's not just the active physical activity. It's also the fact that she has a group of friends that she regularly sees as well. And also, I also think that kind of level of mindset and kind of feeling your age or kind of, I think you're as old as you feel, really. So I think that kind of, I spoke to one of my friends, and last time I saw her, she was at my wedding, and that was back in 2003, and she is now 93. And physically she's changed. So she's a lot thinner, and she's got a lot more wrinkles, but she still has the same vibe and vitality that she always had. And I used to work with her in the States, so she was kind of the matriarch of camp. And it's really incredible. So I think a lot of people, I've got friends that are lots of different ages. So I think having friends that are, intergenerational is really important. So it makes the older people younger and the younger people more open to kind of learn. So I think there's something about the elders and the wisdom that comes with being older that's really important to people. And I think other cultures recognize that elders matter, and the Western culture. So, so there's somebody that I know that's a film director, and he had a film made, and one of the lines in it was that in the West we put our old people on bookshelves in old people's homes, like books on a shelf just to get dusty. And there's so much we can learn from our elders. So I think that kind of wisdom of age is really important, and I think we've got a lot to learn. So I think, and for me, I think it's definitely, I practice a lot of yoga. I do quite a lot of meditation. There's a lot of people I know around me that do sound healing. And I think there's kind of energetic, the energy and frequency of things is probably a better way to treat people than lots of intervention. So I'm really concerned about the nanobots and the, replacing fluids and body in our bodies. And I also think Bruce Lipman's, so I watched a thing that he did, every cell has consciousness in itself. And I think there's the stress as well that we're under. We need to manage stress so that we're kind of contented and grounded to deal with anything that life has to throw at us too. So I think, our mindset and being happy, if we're surrounded by people we love and they support us and we support them to achieve, what makes us happy too. The best thing that I could imagine my children doing is going into a field that they love and they're passionate about. So maybe, if we're passionate about what we do and who we're with, that's, so I think I read something the other day. I call my mum every day, or every other day, and supposedly every time you hear from your children, it makes you live longer. So I think, you know, that communication that you're always, my twin sister lives in Texas, so I see her probably every 6 months if I'm lucky, but we contact each other every few days, or at least within the week. So, you know, I agree with lots of things that have been said by other people, but I'd always take a natural path and try and find kind of alternative remedies, as opposed to go down the kind of, even pharmaceuticals. I don't take drugs. I tend not to, you know, so, and friends of mine are chiropractors or osteopaths, or, you know, so I think I tend to rather kind of make a choice that's, yeah. So anyway, that's about, I think, you know, I think sometimes, my dad died 5 years ago and he was 72. And he was still playing tennis 3 times a week a few months before he died. And he was still working 3 times a week as well. So I think there's a genetic kind of predisposition too. So, but he also was quite a heavy beer drinker. And, you know, those choices we make sometimes take their toll. So, you know, it's kind of, you know, that kind of level of consciousness of choice makes a massive difference, but also outlook too. That's it from me so far.
Thank you. Now I request Mr. Markley.
How y'all doing? Glad to hear this great
Yeah.
Like we lost
my
Mark.
dad, who is 82, should be coming back from the beach on a particular day, but he gets around quite a bit.
Mr. Mark.
It looks like we lost him. He's frozen solid.
Yeah. Professor David, can you hear me? Mr.
He
David?
still bicycles and does the whole 9 yards and all of that. So he's still very much active.
Mark is still going. He doesn't know we can't hear him.
Is known here in the United States.
I'm sorry about that. Mr. David Smith. Mr. David Smith, yeah, what you want to add?
Well, Sharif, thank you again. You know, this topic is one that we've began to talk about in the past and had some great topical areas with it. And, you know, we've talked about the differences between aging against life expectancies. And what we're seeing is some dramatic changes, even in the birth rates between different ages, which are going to affect us as we look at longevity and healthy aging. Sri, can you bring this slide up? I guess he is frozen as well too. Now here's one where you're looking at young children and older people as a percentage of the global population. And you can see that the younger kids are actually been in declining, where people who are aged above 65 are increasing more and more as a percentage of the global population. So that the economics around longevity and the economics around healthy aging are really beginning to take off a lot more. And we see it. In fact, it is estimated today that the marketplace for the aging and anti-aging and longevity marketplace is over $182 billion right now, and is expected to expand by a 22% compound annual growth rate, which is quite a bit. But as you look at where the differences are, and these are the impacts upon longevity, as you can see, they're separated into 4 different areas, really. One of them is government policy and regulation. And there's quite a bit of work actually being done in policy and regulation around anti-aging and longevity. And you're seeing the funding in that. If I go and look inside the National Institute of Health now at some of their funding, there's quite a bit directed towards this. You begin to see it in health technology, where we're using nanotechnology to develop treatments and things that can be delivered directly targeted to the disease state and things. And we're beginning to see nanobots. We're beginning to see all types of targeted repair and nanosurgery really help in there. There's also in some places where we're seeing technologies from other areas, particularly cryo and some others beginning to be brought to bear to look at longevity. The use of AI technology to identify disease, to identify preventive methods that can be used to prevent disease and to provide diagnosis. And the use of at-home monitoring devices. I have a friend who was out walking the other day and their Apple Watch started telling them they were in AFib. And they sat down and called the paramedic, and indeed they were in AFib. And it was their watch that notified them of this and got them the help they needed. And then you're seeing all types of wearables and robotics to improve emotional health, physical wellness, and others. And some of the new trends that are really interesting to me, and we've talked about in your programs before, Sharif, is the use of robots, with both caregiving robots, social robots, which are targeting the healthy aging market. You see in healthcare with age tech, which is a great term now, but it's supporting the multifaceted needs of an aging population and how that goes into play. Wellness and prevention with smart homes, mobility, fall prevention. I mentioned the iWatch with my friend. I know my watch has a indication on it if I take a hard fall. It will pop up on my watch, and I get to push a button if I need help, and it will summon help. Then you see the age reversing business, and you see a lot of money being spent on that. You're seeing it for reversing the aging of disease. You see it for tissue regeneration, growth hormones. You're seeing it used in many places to regrow hair, other things like that, which are very important to a lot of us as we begin to grow older. Also life science, a lot of research in this area with looking at the underlying biological causes. What are therapies that can be used to slow or reverse change? Jason mentioned the telomere research and things, and there's now approaches to begin to slow the growth and even reverse the growth of losing your telomeres as you go forward. You're seeing all types of other drugs for targeting different areas of aging. And cell and gene therapy. I love some of the gene therapy we have right now today, where we're looking at ways to, for example, in cancer cells, the coating around many of the cancer cells are like a stealth airplane. And there's now some of the therapies that we can use to use in immune therapy to crack the stealth shell around a cancer cell and let our own body cells be energized to go in and fight the cancer. We're seeing some with T-cell therapy as we're looking forward, and others to really begin to add it to it. But this was a slide that just to me really begins to help summarize some of the work that's being done to increase longevity and provide us as humans the ability to extend our life if we want to. Like I said at the very start, the one thing we know is we're getting older every day. We're not getting younger. And that for most of us, this topic is one that should hold interest as we plan for our futures. as we begin to look at what needs to be done. And the important consideration here is actually the center of the hub. That as we grow old, many of our social programs, such as Social Security in the United States, how we treat the workforce, how we look at education, they have to be changed as we begin to grow older and older, as we begin to live through multiple career changes and others. How does that impact the government, the policy, and the regulation? So it goes well beyond just how we focus on disease itself. It goes well beyond how do we extend our life cycles. So Sharif, there's just so much on this one. It has so many opportunities for universities to do work, for entrepreneurs to take advantage of this rapidly growing economic marketplace. And it's one which impacts everyone on the earth. So Sharif, thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you, Professor. Now I request Professor Rob.
One of the companies to watch with regard to anti-aging is Google. Back in, well, about a decade ago, there was an article in the Times, I think it was Google versus aging. And they broke down the 9 areas that Google was researching to combat aging. Telomeres, it was a Nobel Prize subject where they covered this, the ways to protect and preserve them so that the ability to refresh the body was maintained. Enzymes that turn off aging genes, another area of research to implement enzymes that specifically increase your longevity. Melatonin research. Melatonin is what regulates our sleep cycle. And we do know that if you sleep regularly and long enough that you will age more slowly. Antioxidants, the concern about DNA damage from the environment, things we eat, the air around us, and finding ways to harden DNA so that it isn't damaged by these things. Caloric restrictions, they've already confirmed that restricting the amount of calories you eat can extend your lifespan by up to 30%, which is certainly significant. So they've actually had some good results with that work. At least they did back in 2012 when this report was released. Hormones, sadly, the hormones we produce does cause accelerated aging, and so finding a way to reduce the hormonal impact on our bodies looks to be promising in terms of extending life cycles. Therapeutic cloning and stem cells. This is an idea of introducing cloned elements into our bodies to replace failing organs or failing portions of our body with younger, more resilient parts, and recognize that our body basically refreshes itself every 10 years. And so the person we are at 11 is not anywhere near the person we were at 1, and every 10 years after that, we are effectively dying all the time, and our body is refreshing itself. And so the idea of introducing things into the body that would reset the clock of certain elements is showing some effectiveness. Herbal research, which herbs and natural occurring constructs can increase the age, and the nanotechnology, the idea of being able to create micro robots that can go into the body and do physical repairs at a molecular level. That's probably out there a bit, but I've been following that much more aggressively than the others, and there is some amazing progress going on with micro machines and what we can do with them. So far, not at scale, but it's showing promise in the out years. We're probably several decades out from actually making this work, but we have figured out ways of delivering power to these things, to control them remotely, and to use them as a group. The drone swarms we've been observing in fireworks displays, it's somewhat similar technology. If you can control lots of machines and provide a fairly high effective control over those machines, you could, assuming you can do the same thing with the micro machines, the nano machines. It does show that there could be a time in the future where you would just dump a bunch of these micro machines inside the body and they just go crazy repairing stuff. We do have to ask ourselves, though, as we look at this, that organ replacement. I didn't talk about the inclusion of mechanical constructs, turning people into cyber humans that are a mix of mechanical and biological parts. Is something that's been done for a while. We do it now with prosthetics. So the prosthetic capability is advancing to the point where the mind can control the arm, the leg, the hand that's going in place. And we've had artificial hearts in market for a while. Granted, their longevity hasn't been great, but it showcases that we can do that. But at the end, what we have to consider is as we start making all these physical changes, at what point does what we've created cease to be human, cease to be the entity we started with, and do we care? In past events, we've talked about digital immortality, the concept of transferring the perception of you into a machine that would live indefinitely. But would it be you, or would it simply be an emulation, a digital clone, a human digital clone of you? It's more likely the latter, but for a third-party observer, I'm not sure they care. If you had a child that was growing up and wanted to know their parent who had died, the only parent they might know would be that digital twin, that human digital twin. And for them, that parent would be real, even though it would not be you if you were the person that passed. So there are considerations we'll have to have as we go through this, including what would happen if we create full-on biological clones. We've had that capability for a while. It's been restricted with regard to human experimentation, at least in the Western world. Pretty clear it's been going on for a while in other parts of the world that don't have those restrictions, in order to allow for extended longevity for the people in power. The nature of that, though, the underlying concepts, the legal aspects, the humanitarian aspects of cloning and using the clones for spare parts are things we have yet to fully understand or deal with. But a lot of capabilities going forward, depending on how willing we are to extend our definition of what is a human, that could allow at least something that appeared to be us to continue indefinitely, or have become possible over the last couple of decades. Not under implementation yet. We do have a couple of human clones that are operating, but they're very rudimentary at the moment, and not at the point where you'd even consider transferring your consciousness into the machine. More along the lines of creating a duplicate, a digital duplicate that would behave as you did when the duplicate was created. I do recognize, though, as we talk about robotics or digital clones or anything else along those lines, that would typically freeze who you were at the time you created the clone, where a human would change. As I mentioned, the cellular replacement's on a decade cycle, but our personalities change over time as well. Right now, the nature of the science is the construct probably would not change. It would be set. It might alter a bit based on the experiences that it had, but the biological elements that would cause changes, our growth, our change in hormonal hormones and the rest, unless you program that in, that wouldn't occur. And so you might end up with something that was far more consistent than we currently have with people. Whether that would be good, bad, or just different, again, is yet to be determined. But it would at the very least be different. And so these are all things we'll get to deal with over the next few decades as we explore what it means to be human, and whether or not we're willing to make the sacrifices to extend our life that would need to be made to extend it past that 150-year theoretical maximum, and whether you'd even want to. There's certainly been a lot of discussion on what would happen if you created somebody that was basically immortal. Would time pass differently for them? Would their ability to empathize with people be reduced? In fact, it might have to be, because dealing with that amount of death over decades, over centuries, would be problematic, particularly if the people around you didn't have access to that same technology, which is initially going to be very expensive, and likely only the very rich or the very well connected will be able to extend their lifespans, which means all the people around them would die over and over again, and the problem with regard to loneliness, connection to the race, all of those things would become problematic. So this is an interesting topic, both because we are still at the very front end of being able to deal with anything like extreme age extension, and also because that extreme age extension would cause problems with regard to population growth. Would create a huge difference between the haves and have-nots, where the people that are dying would probably resent those that had access to this technology, and where the people that had access to this technology might just simply not want to live anymore after losing all their friends and family members that didn't have access to the technology. I remember, and I'll leave you with this, talking to my grandmother before she died in her 90s. She was incredibly depressed. I mean, she was the last one living of her family and of all her friends. And she was extremely lonely and depressed in those last years as a result. And so quality of life becomes something to consider as we're talking about extending it. Often, extending your 90s or extending your 100s for the people that are in that age isn't something that they relish. They actually appear to be looking forward to death and not extending their life. And fixing that problem probably should be getting a lot focused than it currently is.
Thank you. Professor Dave, what's your concluding remarks for today's session? Professor Dave.
Yeah, sure. Well, I really appreciate all that, Rob. That's great, and I love that chart, Dave Smith. I took a screenshot of that. That's wonderful. I think about my own dad, who died at 96, and I went to the doctor recently, and she said, how old was your dad when he died? And I said, well, he was 96. And she said, tell me his lifestyle. I said, well, he drank, he smoked, he never met a vegetable he liked, and he didn't exercise, and he worried all the time. And she said, well, you're going to live to be 106. And I went, okay, thank you. So I think that the first thing you have to do if you want to live a long life is choose parents who are long-lived. Genetics is really important. So since you can't go out and choose your parents, you have to not smoke, not drink, not worry, not stress out, eat locally, take breaks so that you aren't a workaholic, drink lots of water, get your sleep, stay active, associate with young people. I think dancing is important. I am a swing dancer and I love rhythm. And I think if you have that rhythm and you keep it going, that helps to sustain you and maintain you. People who listen to music or appreciate music or move to music, I think, are in better shape than the rest of us. Now, my wife's grandmother, who I knew, lived to 106. She lived in a village in the Philippines. She only ever left that village once, and that was to visit us in the United States. And she only ate food that she cooked herself, that she picked herself, that she grew herself. And she was so active that you couldn't get her to sit down. So I think that's our North Star, is finding older people who have made it through and saying, okay, what'd you do? And I don't think she ever ate anything that came out of a can or a box. Everything that she ate in her whole life was stuff that she had grown herself and cooked herself, or somebody in the village had cooked it. The importance of social support is really something we need to look at. There's so much loneliness in old age, and So extended families and having kids around and being recognized as an elder, as they do in Asia, instead of being denigrated as an elder, I think is really important. So if you don't have such a group around you, build one. Get plenty of young people who will admire what you do. I've had 60 interns from the University of Central Florida over the last 3 years who've helped me to create the Green Actioneers Family Action Guide. And associating with those 60 kids between the ages of, let's say, 18 and 21 has been marvelous for me. I jump in the car and drive out to the university twice a week just to hang out with young people. So I think intergenerational living is really important to keep us mentally and emotionally active. And of course, there's always the big three for yourself, and that is strength, flexibility, and balance. Maintain those. If you can stand on one leg and put your other sock on, you're doing okay. But I know a lot of people who can't do that. And, you really need to think about keeping that balance and flexibility, which means actually going out and exercising and doing something that's physically demanding. It's so difficult at our age, dare I say, I'm only 81, to go, okay, I'm going to go do something, but you got to do it. So all the technologies aside, the person you really have to work on is yourself. And so I think it's pretty easy. It's diet, it's exercise, it's rest, and it's being around young people and keeping a young frame of mind. So that's a bit about it for me. I'm not in on the research. I'm just in on living a nice long life. Thank you.
That's what it seems to be all about and everything. I saw that y'all did not catch me last time. I don't know where Sharif went, but yeah, I was actually enjoying and actually pulled in and was listening to some of the conversation from YouTube while I was having internet issues and all of that. But Dave Finnegan, you brought up some very good points and everything, because one of the things that I was thinking about was how you need to have that useful and intergenerational connection. I think Ali had brought that up as well and everything. So one of the other things that I had said when I was fading in and out was that I think that there's that good connection that we need to have, not just with our human family, but also our animal kingdom as well, because sometimes that is a very important part of the aging process and the living process, whether that's a dog, whether that's a cat, or whether that's even sometimes just paying attention to the wildlife that is out and about. I know that here in Durham, there is a family of rabbits that I used to see on a regular basis, and just having that dialogue with them, or even the family of squirrels or some of the other animals, can help with the aging process, because they can give you a peace of mind that sometimes us as a humans don't always give each other, and all in that space. So I do think that that is important. And as I was saying earlier, the connection to the ancestors, and you had mentioned dance, Mr. Finnegan, one of my good friends who passed on was Baba Chuck Davis, and Baba Chuck Davis was the founder of the African American Dance Ensemble here in Durham and all of that. But he was very much all the way up until the end of his life, was very much about the power of dance, and the power of dance in making sure that you age correctly, and also that connection to the intergenerations as well, because a lot of times they would be different generations that would be dancing together. And definitely mention that connection that we need to have, because too often we put our elderly in nursing homes and in places like that, and we don't do enough in terms of actually caring for them and all in that space. So I think that that's something that we in the West need to do a better job of, not just putting them off in a nursing home or in a home and all of that space. Because I can tell you that right here in Durham, there are two groups that just amaze me. I think Ali would even be amazed by them as well, as would Mr. Smith and everything, because there's a group here called the Dancing Divas. They are a cheerleading group, and I want to say that the oldest member might be in their 80s or 90s, but they actually do the full cheerleading outfit, the full cheerleading routines and all of that, and they will just blow your mind. And this past Christmas, so December of 2022, I saw during the holiday parade. I was actually watching it on YouTube because my was looking to see if my brother's group, which is a group of slingshotters, was going to be in the parade, and they were, but he wasn't participating. But there was a group of young ladies that were all doing jump roping, and I think that they were all 40 and above, and some of them might have even been 60 and 70. And the reason I know that is because the back of their jersey was the number of their year of birth or the year of their age. So like if somebody was 45, they'd be number 45. If somebody was 55, they'd be number 55 and all of that. So they were actually celebrating their age and letting other folks see that age as well. So definitely, sometimes I know that I do things that are probably not enhancing the longevity of life, because I know that I have a lovely addiction. I'm actually staring at one right now to soda and iced tea and other things in that space. But I also agree with what a lot of y'all have said, which is that it is all about attitude. I have jokingly said that I'm going for 200. I think there's only been a couple of characters in the Bible that actually made it. But hey, set an impossible goal. And if I don't make it when I get up to heaven, I'll just tell God and Gabriel and the rest of the folks, hey, I set the goal. I didn't really think that it was an achievable goal, but at least I had that positive attitude and all in that space. I've actually got a friend that is slightly younger than me, and we've actually been involved now in a romantic relationship, and they've told me that I have to reset the goal and everything, because I had originally said it was going to be 200, and they're like, well, wait a minute, if we're just now getting started and you're at 60 now, then the goal has to now be 260, because I want you to be around for the 200 years and all of that of the relationship, should the relationship maintain as it is right now. So maybe I've got to readjust that goal. David Smith and Ali, what do you think? Go for 300 now and all in that space as opposed to 200? So maybe we'll set it for 300 and in that goal. And like I said, if I don't make it, at least I tried.
I wanted to mention something that hasn't been mentioned. That's green tea. I drink green tea every day, all day. I suck on it. That's what I drink. I make some in the morning. All day I'm drinking green tea, and I think it's really good for you. I don't drink anything but green tea and water. I don't drink sodas. I don't drink any alcoholic beverages. And I think it's been really good for my 81-year health.
Yeah. Well, there's something else that I think y'all mentioned, but I know I said it earlier before I was cutting in and out, is exercise is very vital. I know that my dad, who is just recently turned 82 and is actually coming back from the beach on today, he went down there with my two nephews, as I don't have any kids of my own and everything, but he was down there on their annual family beach trip. But he walks quite a bit. He also still swims. He will still does his bicycling and things along those lines. So that whole notion of exercising even well into your 80s and 90s is very much important. And I know that he definitely enjoys doing that. I mean, part of it was he was an active tennis player, and then later in life had some injuries that caused him to not be able to play tennis as much, but then he wanted to still stay healthy. So he got into swimming, and he's been into swimming now for multiple decades.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. David Kelly, you want to add something as a concluding remarks?
Well, a couple things I think I could add to the conversation. One comment about mind uploading. We are so far away from that. We'll definitely cure biological aging before we figure out how to do a proper and complete mind upload. I think biological immortality is an easier problem, honestly, than doing a complete mind upload. That being said, I don't know if it was who mentioned it, but about other existing systems out there for kind of creating like a digital clone. There are some, I know, like there's some group, Terrasem, the founders have some kind of mind file system and this robot that can suck it up, and the AI will kind of replicate whoever it was that you kind of uploaded all the data for. I think our lab has something stronger than that now. We kind of developed the mind file, mind type in a lot more detail, including publishing an XML schema for mind files that allow you to structure quote unquote memories and attach emotional relationships and all this stuff to bits of data, and our system can pick that up and use that as the basis of its personality and talk to it and that sort of thing. But so I think the mind clones or digital clones is we'll see that technology improve dramatically in the next 10 years. And since my expertise is in AI related to longevity, I do know that AI is being used more and more in biochemistry analysis. There's one anti-aging clinic out of Hawaii, or a series of these clinics that, gosh, I think it's been at least 10 years that I did a system for them that managed, you basically recommended supplements to your diet based on your blood chemistry, and it measured like 200 different parameters related to aging. And so the idea was to keep all these parameters within certain whatever the scores were. And that was more than 10 years ago when that system was started. And more AI is being used to manage these elements. But as a lot of the other people have said, I really do think this is probably the single most important research area for us to fund. If you're into anti-aging, I'm probably not the guy to fund, because I'm an AI guy, but I would recommend whatever we can to support people that are doing that kind of research, and when, like, Mark says he wants to live to 300, I'm right there with him. Why stop at 300, man? If I can, I want to live forever, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there. And we'll see. I'll see you, Mark, in 300 years. We'll have a party.
Party complete with dancing and complete with the whole moves and everything. Ali will be there with us. The two Davids will be there, and Dr. Sharif will be there.
My son is a dancer. He's actually national gold medalist in ballroom dance in the open division. I think in Latin, I think it is. But you don't want me to do any dancing, but he's pretty good at it.
There's a great new invention they invented for dancing and all of that. I am a big fan of strobe lighting, because strobe lighting can make anybody that is a bad dancer look good. Because, like I said,
I'm all for that.
The dance and all of that and the bad moves. And am I not right, Mr. Kelly?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're right, spot on.
Thank you. Madam Ali Rice, you want to add any points?
Sure. Okay. In the last year I've been injured like 3 times. So I injured my right arm, my right arm, and my living is drawing or creating. So I had 3 months when I couldn't do yoga and I was kind of limited. Then I hurt my left arm. Then I went to contemporary dance class and pulled a muscle in my calf because there was lots of bouncing. So I think the thing is, sometimes we need to look at what our body's kind of used to before we do anything that's kind of too kind of hard hitting. But I also think that as one of my dad's first cousin, when my dad died, she couldn't make it to his funeral. But ever since, we've spent lots of time with her. She's in her early 70s. And I think one of the things that we need to do is, one, I think we need to keep in touch with that inner child. So we still need to be in awe and wonder of the world. 2, to step out of our comfort zone and do things that we haven't done before. So we've got a sense of adventure. And three, it really helps if you've got kids, because my kids keep me young, and they always say that I'm kind of quite childish, but not. So essentially, that I still have fun and I'm fun loving, and I'm almost in denial about what age I am. So and I also think, I want to see my children grow up and see them have children. So yeah. So it's making me sad, but anyway. So I think, our conscious decisions to do what we do really matter. So,
Hey, Ali, along those same lines, and I
Sorry, and it's really hard if you lose one parent, because the cycle of life, the circle of life's kind of there. And I'm quite open-minded, so I actually think that we energetically actually goes somewhere else, so that this is one realm, and maybe, I know it sounds a bit strange, but maybe we're light beings having a physical experience, and there's much more to the world. And I'm naturally intuitive, and I think the thing is that our reality isn't what we think it is. So I think we need to, since my dad died, I kept him really present, and he's never felt closer to me. So I think, there's a spiritual element to life that none of, so many of us deny, but it's kind of undeniably there. So, and I think, I always sign off spirit always, and that's, that's kind of the most important. And I know, through my experiences, I've been so ill that I've lost my spirit. So I think sometimes we can lose our spirit and still be here, So I think, that kind of vigor and love for life is one of the most important things we have. So, and we want to have our kids have a reality that they don't want to escape from. So if we encourage our kids to follow their passions and do what they love, then working, even if they're having a bad day, it's going to be a good day, in the end. So anyway, sorry to get all the emotion on. But,
Ali, I was actually going to add to a couple of the things that you said. One is I am one of those people that believes that that connection to your kids is very important. As I've stated a couple of times on this show and on other shows, I don't have any kids of my own, but I definitely feel that there are a lot of kids that I am part of their caretaking community and all of that, because I think that even that whole notion that I think it was one of the Clintons or one of the other politicians talked about, which is that it takes a village to raise a child, is very much important, and that's the way that I live life. So there are a number of folks that are kids of friends of mine, or that are connected to friends of mine, that I definitely try to keep an eye on them and see how they are doing, and try to encourage them in whatever they are doing. So while I haven't been blessed with any kids of my own, I think that there are a number of kids that I mentor or tutor, or that I try to support on a regular basis. And I think that is another key to longevity. You heard me talk about Baba Chuck. Baba Chuck had no kids of his own that I'm aware of and everything, but he had hundreds, if not thousands, of kids that he took care of and raised, and that he mentored, not just in the world of dance, but just in the world of life in general. So I do think that is a very important aspect, is that notion of us supporting the kids and all of that. And the other thing that I was going to say, just to raise you up, as that old saying goes, is I mentioned it earlier, but I am a big believer in the ancestral connections. I know for a fact that my grandmother passed away when I was I was in college at the time, so I was in my early 20s and everything, and I'm now 60, and I have no doubt in my mind that she is one of those guiding forces in my life, both in my love of reading, my love of knowledge, and a lot of other things that she helped pass down, as did other members of the family and the ancestral background. So I think that connection to ancestors is very much important to the longevity line. And we hear a lot of people in other parts of the world that are very close to their elders, but also close to their ancestors. And I wish that we did more of that, even in the sense of getting the stories from our ancestors, because I can tell you that there are many stories that have passed on because people did not necessarily catch the stories when the people were living and all of that. So I think that ancestral connection is also very important, and that they do watch from afar. So I'm sure your dad is watching even to this day. and all along those lines. So just some of my immediate thoughts to what you were saying, Ali.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're muted, Sharif.
Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Longevity is a very important research project we are launching through Dhaka University in Bangladesh. Beside that, we are developing a lot of projects. We are developing city, hospital, school, college, university. This is very, very important for emerging economy. Those who love to take actions, they can join in our team and they can work as a team for World Talent Economy Forum. Especially, I want to give thanks our speakers, those who continuously educate our audience, educate our entrepreneur, educate the emerging economy through dialogues, through their experience. I want to give special thanks to Mr. David Smith, David J. Kelly, Mr. Markley, Mr. Dave, Madam Ali Rice, and all of our speakers. Coming May, we have our very, very exclusive conference on Nikola Tesla Technology Conference. Many university, government agencies, corporations, and academy, NGO, everybody joining. Impact investors, they're joining in our conference. Hopefully, it will be very, very effective for uplifting the emerging economy. Hopefully, through this process, we can minimize the gap. And if you love to take action, join World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.